You can visit these and know more about some of the pioneering work being done by our Centers of Excellence, our NatWest Digital Library, a kiosk where students of a postgraduate program have put together their takeaways from their rural immersion. We also have a fun DM snake and ladder game and a reflection corner for participants to engage in. We are thrilled to announce the launch of ISDM CDSSI Code for Change 24-25, a social sector hackathon. This time, we will be building solutions on two themes: youth employability and climate resilience. Together with our knowledge partners, Esther Foundation and Common Grounds, we encourage you to find your team and register soon for your favorite theme. Scan the QR code at the CDSSI kiosk to register. We have a kiosk by Goonj called Disasters, Myths and Realities, witnessing disasters through Anshu Gupta's lenses. It is a photo exhibition journey in the last 3 decades in disasters, a roaming exhibition, pictures from the ground. Our student volunteers are in the room and they will be distributing post-its for you to write your questions for our speakers. ISDM Center of Innovative Finance and Social Impact, CIFC, is launching a report in December on impact measurement that captures current practices and challenges of impact measurement in the sector. It represents perspectives of various M&E experts, practitioners, and not-for-profit organizations. Requesting everyone to please take your seats. May we also request all audience members to please put their phones on silent for calls and notifications. Additionally, flash photography is prohibited during the sessions and plenary. Our last session for the track, Building the Sector of the Future, is titled Standardized Impact Metrics, Yay or Nay. The track on building the sector of the future will explore critical topics shaping the sector's trajectory in the years ahead. The topics being explored through the first 3 sessions are evolving roles of Samaj and Sarkar, models of scaling impact, and how philanthropy can aid sustainability in sector. The last session is on standardized metrics. The session focuses on to explore the future of impact standardization in the social sector. The session will also explore the dilemma of one size fits it all approach and its implications. May I invite our moderator for the session, Mr. Arun Nathan, partner Sattva Consulting. Can we have a huge round of applause for him? We are also pleased to have Dr. Radha Ashrit, Deputy Director General, DMEO, Niti Aayog, Liby Johnson, Executive Director, Gram Vikas, Nikhil Pingle, Chief Strategy and Research, Magic Bus India Foundation, Abhinav Bhatia, Program Manager, Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, India, Soha Moitra, Regional Director, CRI, and Gayatri Nair Lobo, CEO, ATECF. Can we have a huge round of applause for our speakers? Over to you, Arun.
Super, thank you very much. And good evening and welcome all of you to this panel discussion that we have today. I think there is largely the saying that goes around saying there is nothing. Hello? Yeah, thanks. So there is nothing certain in life other than death and taxes, right? And at least for those of us who are here in the room, I think there is a third thing which seems to be certain, which is the ambition to create impact. And I think that is also what may probably be kind of getting all of us into this particular room here. And there has always been this conversation about, acha, impact karna hai. And if you have to do impact, then obviously you're talking about how do you know that there is impact? So which essentially takes us to this fact of saying, how do you measure impact? So there is this entire conversation around measurement of impact. And there has also been a conversation around, if you're talking about measurement of impact, should that be standardized? Should it not be standardized? Right? And each one of us in our own capacities have seen this to some extent play out in our own lives, our own roles, and so on and so forth. And today's session is primarily to kind of shine a light on this here. This is a very, very interesting panel. So, for example, it was my colleague who was supposed to moderate here. So now they've got a cheap Mallu substitute. He was also a Mallu, so now to kind of come in here. So that is how I'm here. But what is more interesting in this panel is the fact that today on this panel, we've got representatives of Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar, right? Because now in Sattva, one of the things that we say is impact is everyone's business, right? And so we've got all the representatives here. And what we did was, internally, we had a conversation and agreed that rather than everyone presenting their views, which is essentially what happens in all panels, we will convert this into something fairly interesting, which primarily means we will convert this into a format of a debate, right? And now the interesting part is we will take a for and an against stand. And we'll take a for and an against stand on whether you need standardized impact matrices or not. Does one size fit all? Do you need it? And that is the conversation that we are going to have, right? But even before we do and start, I have a question to all of us here. Those who agree, and you have to take a stand. You can't not take a stand, right? It's a pure participatory approach that you can really clearly see playing out. How many of you think that you are for standardized matrices? Please raise your hands. Yeah, is it pure tashan ke saath is it? Okay, super. And how many of you believe that's not the way to go? Okay, wonderful. I think I think you are very, very well set to get into this conversation. There is just one invitation that I have to all participants, right? So I have in my career being able to work with non-profits first, then on corporates, work with the government and so on and so forth. And one of the things that I have personally realized was you find good people on all sides. The only problem that kind of also comes in is that I take my reality as the only truth, right? So the invitation is, as you hear the panelists here, are you also able to see whether there is another perspective that they are kind of bringing in? At the end of the day, the conclusion is a choice that you are making about your own journey. So that's broadly the context. Today, we have requested, and you know the background. I'm not kind of getting into the background of the panelists. Suffice to say, all of them are fairly, very esteemed panelists, esteemed practitioners, leaders in their own rights. But we have requested them to take a stand, right? We have requested them to take a clear stand. Now, this clear stand is not representative of their own individual perspective, nor is it a perspective of the organization that they represent. But the reason why we've requested the panelists to take a stand is to really put a magnifying lens. It's almost like a dentist putting a magnifying lens to really figure out surgery, right? So we want to really go in detail and then build on it. So you will find a range of views kind of coming along here. Yeah, is that okay? Can we then kind of start? Is that good energy to start? Okay, super. So we are in the Sholay movie, right? So it is the Aadhe idhar, Aadhe udhar, Baki mere saath wale mode mein. So we've got three of our panelists on to my left, who are going to talk about why standardization of matrices are needed, right? To my right, correct. Sorry, to my right. That's absolutely right. Right, to my right. So we have Abhinav, we've got Abhinav, we've got Dr. Radha and Nikhil, who will primarily speak about why this is needed. And then to match up, we've got the left side, right, where we've got Liby, Soha and Gayatri saying why is it not needed, right? And then we will do a beautiful dance and symphony of moving from one to the other. Let me start by inviting Abhinav to open the batting.
Thank you so much. You've put a lot of pressure on me to open the battle. But I will start by saying that, as Arun pointed it out, that it depends on the situation, but we are taking a stand for the debate. So view it as a stand that has been taken in order to fight for the side that I'm representing today, which is for side of the debate today. So I'll straight away get into it. I think there are three reasons that impact matrix are very important. For the funders to align on what is getting delivered and to really put their money behind what am I achieving by spending X amount of dollars on the ground. A standardized impact matrix is very helpful in articulating that both externally as well as internally within the organization. For the not-for-profit or the for-profit service provider that is helping the funder deliver that intervention on ground, it is very important if there is a standardized matrix. If they're measuring a standardized matrix which has been agreed on, it becomes easier, it becomes processized, it becomes less debatable, at the end of the grant or at the end of whatever the relationship between the funder and the service provider is, to say whether any impact has been achieved or not, whether dollars have been utilized properly or not, or whether dollars have been wasted. That at the end is a hopeless debate. There is no point getting into that debate, so it's better to agree on a standardized matrix upfront. Having said that, often what gets measured is what is available. What is available may or may not be right. And if it is right, then the debate is sealed. Then there is no point looking elsewhere. But often there is a much more nuanced view to the intervention that is happening on ground. So we always have to strive towards getting to a better point of what is available. What is available will get measured. You might have often heard this phrase in the schools as well, that if you change the board exams, the way the teaching happens in the classroom will change, because you're essentially teaching to the test. So whatever is getting measured will be how the intervention will get delivered on ground. Now, having said that, if what is right is not available, there has to be significant investment that has to be put behind what is the right measurement. And just to give you an example, the government of India today talks about Nipun Lakshya, the FLN mission, the foundational literacy and numeracy, grade level competency. If you rewind back 20 years, were these the terminologies ever in the vocabulary of any of the school systems that we were looking at? What were the school systems looking at? What is the pass rate? What is the board percentage? How many people achieved a 75% or a distinction in board? How many achieved a 60% plus? Those were the 3 or 4 metrics that were getting measured. No one was looking at foundational literacy and numeracy. No one was looking at grade level metrics, whether students are grade level competent or not between the foundation and the board level. Board exams and school leaving is just one part of it. But because there was enough investment, enough momentum put behind what is right to be measured for the last 10-15 years, NEP came out and recognized a lot of those as standardized impact metrics. And once those have been recognized as standardized impact metrics, there is a lot of momentum in measuring that across the state. So it is very important from my standpoint to say that a standardized impact matrix is necessary, A, to align on what you're delivering, B, if it is not right, then get the right metric, but align on that right metric upfront, and C, to ensure that the dollars or the money that is being spent on ground is spent in the right manner.
Super. So we've started 3 big points that kind of come up. One, you're dealing with multiple stakeholders. Standardization helps alignment. Second, it also creates, you're able to get to detail, and so the detailing aspects can work. 3, you can build momentum because everyone understands it's the same way. Libby sir, what is your thought?
I'd asked the moderator for a standard disclaimer to be very forcefully placed that what gets said in this room cannot be held against people who say that. Because I represent a grant receiving organization, and there are many donors in this room. I don't want tomorrow a grant proposal to be shot down because the desk office I had heard me speaking against standardization. Standardization is adhering to standards is what I do during the day because I have to do it, but I don't believe standardization is good. I spent during college 3 years in the NCC. So we were at that time in the infantry, so we had to learn bayonet fighting. And we were told very clearly how to thrust, because you thrust for the enemy's heart. Otherwise you die. That is very standardized. There's a certain moves you make, knowing that the enemy will make some other moves. So you do that. It's standardized. In the army, standardization is needed because it's a matter of life. It's a matter of national security. The same NCC, when we went to 2 rock climbing camps, one on Gwalior Fort and the other in Pune, Singad, I remember, the same instructor did not give us rules because he could not. Because we had to find our way up the rock. Only certain principles were espoused. That you should look before you hold, and you should always remember your belay is tight. It was unlike bayonet fighting in the same army. If you go for a sit-down banquet, the place is set. Where the which fork is, which knife is, it's standardized because it's convenient. Because it's easier for the server to give you the course and expect you to finish it in time and not search for the spoon or the fork. We are dealing with social change. Social change is not life and death. It is for many people if you do it wrong. But it's not national security, it is social change. So there are three reasons why I want to argue why standardization should not happen. First is standardizing measurement of impact cannot happen in isolation. You have to standardize the process in order to achieve a standardized result. I mean, you cannot say that, okay, we are only measuring standardized, but you have to produce for standardized measure. So, this very progressive state government in this country has a very wonderful program to promote forgotten grains. It's been on for last 6-7 years. It's a wonderful program, but it has become a forgotten grain program and not a forgotten grains program, because there's only one grain that is being promoted. Why? If you look at the concept note, if you look at the design document, it's talking about 7 or 8 different grains, forgotten ones. But what is happening on ground is only one, because measurement has been standardized, and that is what you will get. You design for a 75 mm pipe, you will get 75 mm pipe water. You don't get 90 mm water. So you cannot standardize for measurement alone. You will end up standardizing the entire process, and that is not what social change will help achieve. You will say standardize the parts. Of course. I mean, I'm sure you'll come back to say standardize the parts. Of course you will. And then what will happen? You will, of course, miss the woods for the trees. You will have standardized the parts, and the standardized parts will work. Everything else that is required for social change to happen will not. And you're asking us to standardize and this is also a standardized term, VUCA. I don't know how many of you are familiar with VUCA. Volatile, uncertain, whatever, ambiguous. How do we standardize in a VUCA world? We are talking about wicked problems. And that's something, again, what the standardization advocates like Rathish and Krishna have sold to me, that problems are wicked. Right? I mean, how do you standardize for that? How do you standardize for something like COVID that will happen? Climate change is telling us we are not doing it right. So by standardizing, are we saying that we know the future? We know what the future is going to give us? Is that why we are standardizing? Finally, my last point. There's a fundamental issue here. I believe the social change work, the social purpose ours, is something that we inherited as trustees. As people who do social change work do not do it as owners and investors. We do it as trustees. And we are holding trusteeship for utilizing public resources for the larger common good, which means our accountability is multidimensional. So are we going to standardize for multidimensional accountability? There's a community that we work with who are probably the primary stakeholders. There are the donors, there is the government, and government at multiple levels. Government at the state level has different accountability needs compared to government at the local level. There are within the implementing sector multiple stakeholders. So are we going to standardize for everybody? I rest my case here. Thank you.
Okay, super. So the larger points that Libby is raising is one, right? This context is a very different context than army, right? Or banquet. One, is the context appropriate for standardization? Two, is my role as an impact stakeholder actually conducive for standardization, right? And are you actually understanding whether standardization of the metrics means standardization of the process? And is that what you set out to do, right? And so we've kind of heard for and against. I want to invite Dr. Radha. Dr. Radha, you are part of NITI, and you see the government programs playing out. How do you view this conversation?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Am I audible now? Yeah. My name is Radha, and I work in Niti Aayog. Standardization for against. I'm working in government, so I have a feeling that I will vote for only standardization simply because resources are limited. All of us know. When resources are limited and we have to get the desired output or outcome at the long run, then we should have some kind of standardized indicators or metrics available with us so that we can walk through that path. If someone is saying that food and nutrition security or zero hunger is our goal, then it has to be standardized. Why? Then only we can work towards that particular goal. If that particular goal has to achieve, then I should know what kind of process I have to follow. Yes, I understand that there is a need for changes. There is always need for modification, reformulation, all this agreed. Having said that, without having a long-term goal, we cannot achieve the path which we will be traveling. So that I feel that my first point would be we should have a long-term vision or long-term views should be based on standardized one. Okay, for the short term, definitely since our resources are limited, we may come up with some unexpected events like COVID or any other epidemics or something. No one can imagine what will happen next day. Yes, it is true. Uh, in that case, we can only think about short term. We may have some little bit room for changing our goals here and there or metrics here and there. But in the medium term as well as long term, we should have a proper defined metrics that is standardized one. And India is a very big country, more than 6 lakh villages, 600 more than 600 districts. So if I want to see the progress, at least one indicator, what is the way I can measure, what the way we can measure, whether it is government or whether it is a single any other organization, we need some kind of key performing indicators that should be standardized at least, so that the progress, the trend we can, so that we can see that are we going in the right direction or not. For that purpose also we need standardized metrics. Then as you all aware that our honorable prime minister always again and again saying that we want to become Vikasit Bharat. If we want to become Vikasit Bharat, certain pillars has to be standardized. Without that pillars or the standardized pillars, we cannot move forward because we do not know what will happen next. So accordingly, for making changes, whether it is in the policy level or whether it is in the scheme level, because we are dealing with more than 70 ministries, more than 100 ministries and departments, and more than 4,400 schemes for socio-economic development of our fellow Indians. So all those things has to be measured in a systematic manner. Then we need the standardization. I will stop here. Thank you.
Clearly, very interesting points. So, as in almost as a response to the against point, the point is, but in this context needs it. It is not some other context. This context needs it. And why does this context need it? Because of two things that Dr. Radha is saying. One seems to be the long-term dimension. And without an understanding of long-term dimension from a standardized standpoint, it doesn't make sense. Second is just the scale. At this particular scale, how do you even operate without something which is not standardized? Is what Dr. Radha is saying. Over to you, Sohaji.
Thank you. So it's giving me an opportunity to retort on this point. So here is the thing. We are in a country where every 100 kilometers, there is a change in the language we speak, caste, socioeconomic status, and the dialects. Every 100 kilometers, all of these are changing. So one fit size approach is a misnomer. I mean, that's one point I would like to really make it very loud and clear. The other point is we really have to figure out that are we compromising because we want standardization, and are we really seeing a long-term impact? Are we really measuring the long-term impact, or we are confusing between outcome and impact? Because outcomes can be short-term and can come quickly. So for example, if you want to measure incentivization around education program in amongst girls, quick matrix would be what has it done for our girls to go into school and what has been the enrollment rate. But is that it? Or do we want to really see in long term what has it done to, are our girls really completing 12th? Are they completing the schooling? Or what has it done to delay their early marriages? So if that is the patience continuum standardization can offer, it would be great. But at least in the experience of our, where we see on the ground, we really struggle. Honestly, we struggle with, giving that balance. The other point I would like to make is that there is, there is a striving of innovation and spontaneity. For in terms of when we are set with a pre-agreed matrix. Are we involving the stakeholders involved right from the bottom? Is it a bottom-up approach at all, or it's a pre-decided matrix sitting in some distant space with you and me in the room, and we are deciding it? Because when we are working with the community, and we have seen the merit that when we are involving the community right from the beginning, there's a magic happening there. They, on a live, real-time basis, challenging the assumptions, and the flavor which comes is beyond words. The other example I would like to give here is that if suppose, what kind of how are we defining impact really? So for example, if we are working in a Dalit community and they are for centuries struggling to even have they don't possess, their struggle is to possess a piece of land. And if we come as an indicator, we define an indicator as saying that how many Dalit community families have permanent homes, we are starting in a wrong benchmark. Are we really measuring what really we want to set out to be? I mean, there are, so the mismatches between what we really want to achieve and what kind of matrix we define is another point of view I would like to make. The other very strong point, and again I go with Libby, that please pardon me here, I'm going against the grain of donors, but in corporate sector, it's a given pattern in terms of investments on on observing and changing consumer behavior. There's a loads of funding there. They invest, and for example, for years they invest on seeing how a local breakfast eating habit can be changed into eating cereals, or how face soap changes into a face wash, and loads of investment is done in that trajectory. But why is there a hesitation when it comes to measuring and giving commitment to measure social behavior? It means a longitudinal patience, longitudinal studies. How many NPOs here are getting investments in coming up with longitudinal studies? So because we are also in a business, we are in a business to measure the changes, behavioral changes in breastfeeding, behavioral changes in dowry system, behavioral changes in getting mindset shifts in patriarchy. So there, it needs long-term investment. So I think, that is also the most important, the commitment to longitudinal studies. And if it can marry standardization, nothing like it. Then the other point which I would like to, which I see as struggle on the ground is when we are measuring combined thematic impacts. Like, for example, it's easier to measure with standardization the impact of incentivization it has in enrollment, but it is complex to measure what it means if there are increased rates of institutional delivery on malnourishment, for example. What it means that if children are not going to school, what is the impact on the rate of child labor or child marriage? So this intercorrelation between themes becomes difficult if you go with a pre-decided standard matrix. And last and the most important point is involvement of the stakeholders. Again, I would reiterate, right from co-creating the design of that matrix, whatever it may be, until we fail, we do start. I mean, I would like to reiterate, even as a player in this sector, where I am in a cusp role, where I'm also a grant maker and I'm implementing a SCRI, it's tough because, right, when you go up the ladder, you kind of lose touch with the ground realities, even if you start by involving the stakeholders, right? So that, as a sector, we need to take accountability, that we take that the grassroots, the frontliners participation, right from bottom to the up. So yeah, I think for now.
Nice. So this is a good response, right? Because the first point that came from the fourth side was you need standardized matrices and metrics because it will help in alignment of stakeholders. And the point from the against is, are you even aligning stakeholders? If the stakeholder out there is the community and that has a voice, does standardized metrics allow for that particular voice to kind of come? So on the problem side, do you understand that the problem is complex, standardization can't deal with it? Second, does it even solve from a solution standpoint? Solution needs innovation. Is there space for innovation at all in what we are doing? And if all of that is done, is there funding even to kind of get in there? So is it saying that do standardized metrics because that takes little funding and be done with it? Are you even trying to solve this problem for all the conversation that we are doing on bottom up? Pingle sir.
Hello everyone. Nikhil Pingle from Magic Bus. The way I'm going to look at it is it include results which is specific to program results and outcomes as part of what we are calling standardization. Okay, and my point is that results and outcomes need to be specifically aligned with the key milestones in the journey of the beneficiary or key behaviors in their in that situation. So certainly going for standardization of results and outcomes, that's the first thing. Also, when I look at it, we are speaking in the context of building the voice of the sector, and the voice of the sector can be built when we are looking at the problem from the same lens. Impact metrics will follow what we define as the problem. If the problem definition itself, we might all say we are working in the education space, but we are looking at the problem in a very different disparate manners, right? So what's really important is also for us to look at the problem from the same way, and that will follow with standardized indicators or standardized metrics. And when we look at it from national goals, when we are trying to solve problems which are of national importance, that means we need to rally all our resources, all our mobilize all our staff, etc., and align them towards that particular goal. And that is something which requires standardized metrics. The way I have also looked at it is from the context of the work that we do at Magic Bus, which focuses on something which is very difficult to measure, which is socio-emotional learning and skills, right? Socio-emotional skills. So there, what we have done is looked at standardized measurement of all of our programs and the skills developed. And we have had a very successful experience of having done that across multiple geographies and different contexts. Even in the tribal, be it urban, be it rural, we've been able to standardize the scales, the way of measurement, etc. at an organization level. That was the first thing which we did. We were in fact being asked by some of our institutional donors that, okay, this is a certain evidence for your X program and this is a evidence for your Y program, but what's the evidence for the Magic Bus program? And that's the reason when we put together all the data and came out with what are the specific indicators and measures and the improvements of the Magic Bus program. And that really helped us tremendously in terms of our resource mobilization, in terms of our communication to donors. And also, there was a time when the teams internally were saying that, oh, we are doing a program which is aligned on health. We are trying to do a program which is aligned on core education, something on socio-emotional, but what are we really trying to do? So after we devised these standard metrics, standard log frames, etc., and we've kept certain room, right, for contextualization. So 70% of it is standard, 20 to 30% of it is non-standard, maybe context specific, etc. But what that has allowed us is really communicating internally. So 3,500 people within the organization are clear about what is the organization delivering finally. And what I'm saying, if it's possible at an organization level, certainly it's possible at a sectoral level as well. Because we are all trying to look at the same kind of development indicators at a country level. That's my viewpoint. And regarding the aspect of non-standardization, the way we approached it is the external indicators, which are say beneficiary facing or donor facing, etc., we have standardized them. So in all our skilling programs, we look at 5 indicators, be it in Tamil Nadu, be it in Bandara. We are still looking at the same indicators. The levels and targets may be different. In Tamil Nadu, we might achieve 85%. In Bandara, we might be targeting 65% placements. But internally, we are looking at 35 different indicators at a center level. And that there is a lot of room for contextualization, customization of the program design and approach at a center level, still delivering the same kind of outcomes at the final level. And finally, I think there was a point regarding the trust deficit across the 3 Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, and that is also perhaps because of the way we are looking at the problem is very different. So when we start looking at indicators in a very standardized way, my viewpoint is that it is going to play a big role in reducing the trust deficit across all of these 3 constituencies as well. So that's it from my side. Yeah.
Super. I think very, very interesting points of saying if we don't understand the problem together in the same way, how on earth are we going to solve it? But if you have to understand the problem the same way, you need to understand it in one particular way, in which case there is standardization. But now when you talk about standardization, the ability to communicate is something, Nikhil, that you've just mentioned. And also the fact that, are you primarily saying it cannot be standardized? There are examples where it can be standardized to the context, where there is some amount of non-standardization. Like in predominant to hai, then why are you saying this is not going to work? Is the 4 argument. Over to Gayatri. Right here.
So similar to Arun, I'm also the cheap Mallu replacement. So you'll see Reshma's picture there, and Reshma's promised me lunch next time I'm in Delhi. I wear a donor hat, but more than that, I think I work in the social sector, and so impact for me is primary. While I'll make some of my points, I will also respond to the points that the 4 side has brought up. The first one is, I do agree that standardization is required, but it's not the be-all and end-all. It can't end with standardization. Unfortunately, that's what seems to be happening more recently. Who is the standardization for? It cannot be, who is the impact for? It cannot be for donors. It needs to be for the community that we are trying to serve. So therefore, when we say it's easy for donors to be able to compare programs, that's deeply problematic. That should not be the reason to be making impact in the first place. Abhinav, you talked about FLN. Sorry, I'm going to pick on people. You can beat me up outside. When you talk about FLN, very important. But what it does then is it ignores everything else around a child's development, which when they're spending most of the time in school. What happens to their love for learning? What happens to helping them collaborate with each other? What happens to helping kids and teachers be able to provide a nurturing environment to children? If the focus is only on tests, it's tough. I mean, my kids didn't do an exam till grade 6. Till then, it was all love and fresh air. To Radha ma'am, again, I agree, 100% zero hunger. It's a standard metric we need to aim for. The problem though is that, and especially for government or our SDGs, right, that is, you need to have those kind of standard metrics that we all hold ourselves to. The problem though is that those metrics then trickle down to almost yearly metrics. It's not a long-term, in 2030, I will meet this goal, or in 2047. That's where the breakdown happens. And that's where NGOs, I have seen, have had to move their programs in a way to meet these metrics, even though they know that their program is very strong in A, they're now doing A plus B. So, and finally, Nikhil, actually what you said sounded to me like you're on our side.
So you said that there are no standard metrics for social emotional learning, so you had to develop it. And so for me, that for me is what the non-standardization is. You're listening to what is needed by the community. You're able to then develop metrics, and I'm saying you need metrics, nobody is denying that, but you're able to develop metrics which are in response to what the community needs, right? If children need, and I 100% agree, children need social emotional learning, it's important for us to understand and break that down, as you've beautifully done at Magic Bus. I've seen this, to be able to then see, is this working or not? But it's not saying ki children have to reach grade 4 and grade 5 and I'll work only towards that. So that's what I feel is like, that is the contextualization. You said 30% you leave to your centers. I think that's fantastic. That's how it should be. So for me, building metrics is important, but contextualizing it to your needs and your community's needs is what's missing some very often in programs. And I mean, even our own work that we do in water, while we were initially just measuring surface capacity created, it's while talking to communities, talking to farmers, you realize, okay, well water levels are increasing. That means groundwater is getting recharged. My team member Amrita went and found a tool that can help us now prioritize water bodies that have better recharge, so that there's more benefit to the communities. So for me, it's, unless you talk to the people that you want to be doing your work for and serving, you can't get to what actually impact means, and then you need to constantly look at what you're measuring as a result of that. I'll end with that.
Wonderful. So the point is, you're saying build the sector, everyone needs to come together. Who is the impact that you're trying to create for? Right? And are you following a reductionistic approach by really being able to kind of focus on it? And a few very important points. Let me stop here. Show of hands. How many people really think standardization is the way to go? Come on. Right? Okay. No, I'll also say come on for the other thing. On both sides. How many of you think standardization is not the way to go? Come on. Come on. Balancing it out. Super. Okay, so we've got time for questions. We've got another 11 minutes to go. I would keep time for a final round of quick comments, but any questions that you have, we will take it in bunches so that we can address it together. You can address it to an individual panelist or a side. Any questions?
So Abhinav, actually, in the start you mentioned something about standardized metrics and they should be agreed upon. So my question is like, if you standardize it, like different organizations have different context, different within internal context of their organization, but also the context in which they are working, the community and all. So like I can like agreed upon makes much more sense to me, because then you can see, okay, what will work, this is what is required. Like the same old saying of you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, that kind of a thing. So how do you justify that, like standardization is the way to go? And second one, Nikhil, you mentioned like in an organization you have been able to do this like with 70-80% standardization and remaining left to the context. And then you posed a question, then why not at a sector level, why can't this be done? But again, similar to the previous one, like the context is very different. The context changes. Like I think Soha ma'am was also mentioning that every 100 meters, language changes, things change, community changes. So how can we say in a sector we can standardize a whole lot of things and then just leave a bit for the context?
Got it. 2 questions. Any more? Sorry, I'll read out questions that are also kind of coming through. Funders ask a standard question. How many children entered schools with inclusive education with little understanding of our work in moderate to severe intellectual impairment? How does one answer the question in terms of standardization? Here is a question for the 4. Are there examples where a standardized goal or a commonly articulated problem is acknowledged as solved by using non-standard different matrices? Good. We've got more questions. I'll read out one more before I go to the rest. When we want to build an inclusive society, how is the standardized measurement addressing diversity and reaching the last in line? Let me hold here. Oh, you guys have no questions, is it? Okay.
We have our agents there. No. हम तो तैयारी करके आए हैं ना.
Clearly, field building. So I think most of the questions are to you.
Sure. I think, sorry, what we are confusing is at what level are we standardizing and how are we standardizing? Any process or any theory of change will have inputs, will have outputs, will have outcomes, and will have impact. Now, the standardization can happen at all levels. This depends on the intervention that you're doing. And just to answer your question, sorry, I didn't get your name. The standardization, when it is done on pre-agreed matrix, it is taking the context in standardizing the matrix, and it is pre-agreeing that in this context, this is the matrix that needs to be measured, and this is how it should be measured. Just to build on a couple of points that the against side had also put out was that, for example, Libby, you pointed out that the objective was to climb the mountain. Now that's a standardized matrix. Everyone has to climb the mountain. How they climb the mountain is the process of the climbing the mountain. That can be very different for people. But how they are climbing the mountain, what they are climbing for is the mountain. Thank you. Just a couple. And Gayatri, to your point about FLN and learnings in school, I completely agree with you that all of those points are important. But there is so much noise in the system today that if we don't agree to a standardized matrix, none of them will be achieved. So we have to start somewhere. We're starting at a FLN, and I completely agree, socio-emotional learning, ability of teachers, etc. Those can be step 2 and 3. So you're just prioritizing in the matrix what is important today. And just to answer your point, it's not necessary to do it or from a donor side. It has to be done from a bottom-up approach. A very good example is the lifted bond that we are running, where we have the leading not-for-profit providers, which are Pratham, People, Kevalya Education Foundation, and Language and Learning Foundation, LLF, as the service providers. All metrics have been standardized, but have been agreed in their context. They're different for each service provider. It is the first time that you are standardizing how do you measure effectiveness of a meeting, which are at an output level. I'm not even targeting the outcome in this case, because the outcome will be a 3-year journey. So I'll measure outcome at the end of 3 years, but I'll measure outputs annually so that I can understand whether the impact is being achieved on ground or not.
So I was referring to the standardization of measurement of socio-emotional learning in within the organization and all of its programs. But further, what we also did was in our work with the as part of the Life Skills Collaborative, what happened was we were working on, or we were contributing to, the standardization of life skills measurement across multiple contexts and geographies. And we were interested with Mizoram State, so I can share about the experience of that. So the standard life skills measurement scales and tools got adopted by the government. So henceforth, all the measurement of life skills is being done on those standard scales. Further, what the government has also done is included life skills and all of the measurement mechanisms, whatever was being created, has been included also in the B.Ed curriculum of the teachers. So that's the way how, from a program level to a state level to inclusion of all of that into the teacher training has got done based on the same set of measurement standardization. So it was one project which led to a large initiative and further adopted by the government. So that was one example. The other thing we've heard about different children having different learning levels, different interests, and so on. And that's really the reason why we are coming up with the holistic progress cards. And Magic Bus is also involved with various government stakeholders in designing and developing some of the holistic progress card related indicators. And now that is going to get standardized as measurement method for students' learning progress. So success is already going to get measured on those lines. So what I'm sharing is the verdict is already out there.
So we've got 2 questions for this side. Yeah. Question number 1. How can impact be benchmarked if you don't standardize? That was question number one. Question number two. Now in this new age of where you're talking about social stock exchange, etc., you're talking about standardization. How does it even kind of play if you take your version of or view on standardization? Yeah, please.
I'm pretty sure this question is from my own. So, but I will not look at the person. See, the social stock exchange is saying, yes, measure outcomes, tell us what those outcomes are. They're not saying all education NGOs have to have the same outcome. They're not saying every life skill program has to have the same outcome. They're saying, you tell us what you want to achieve and bring it. So I'm saying impact 100% necessary. I'm looking at you now. 100% necessary, but it doesn't have to be the same for everyone. Contexts differ, and I don't need to repeat the points again. I'm just saying context matters.
See, on the impact one, I guess me as a doer, Gayatri as the donor, has actually absolutely no stake on the final impact. How do I step into a tribal lady's house in Kalahandi and design this is the impact that you will get? She defines that. So she standardizes it. The problem is we are not able to measure to her standards. If we were able to do that, then that is welcome standardization. So let's not forget the point of I made about trusteeship. It is her impact. We are only a means to achieving part of that.
Just, relating to the point of trust deficit, I think the call and the shout out is to have trust in this sector to be able to measure impact which serves nuances and diversity. And just that, that is, and that, how many examples are we quoting here beyond numbers today? I can't hear any. Just to give you an example, we were working with Santali girls, and it was about impact, measuring impact in an education program and seeing how well they are doing in terms of enrollment, etc. And we were following a standard matrix, but we had reached a place where our frontliners observed that there is a subtle shift in the knowledge, attitude, practice amongst the community members, teachers' accountability, behavior of children. But somehow that standard matrix was not capturing it. So one fine day, our frontliners started videographing it, and they made short clips and sent it to the funder. I'm not even actually, distinguishing between the organization and the funder and all that. And funders were really amazed by that, and they made that as a primary data collecting tool, making video clips. So there is a power in it. What I'm trying to say is that it's just that this sector you can slap from that whatever, I don't have the right terminology of that impact bond with banking mindset, and we can copy paste everything here. But look at the compromises. Where is the innovation? Where is the spontaneity? Where is the quality? And I'm just kind of sorry, I'm maybe sounding very passionate towards all this without numbers, but that has a merit here because we are working with humans. We are working with, which needs, like to quote Dr. In the morning, Balu, that we are working with human development. It takes generations to change, and we are not here reporting quarterly basis or monthly and nowadays daily basis. So yeah, I rest my case.
Yeah, after hearing all the stakeholders' observations and points, since I am representing the government, I feel that we all heard all of you. Now we can give the verdict. It's not that I'm the organization I am representing. I'm not talking on behalf of that, but I would definitely like to say that in we actually touch not one person or two person, 140 crore people of Indian fellow citizens. So in that scale and in that dimensions, we cannot think that everyday changes, what should I say, performance metrics are changing on a daily basis. Because I'm working in Niti Aayog, even now many people know that is planning commission. Many people do not know what is Niti Aayog. आप private sector में काम कर रहे हो क्या करके people used to ask me. So what I want to say is, so it takes time to absorb and then respond. So in that case, we need some kind of so-called standardized parameters should be there to measure our progress. Otherwise, what will happen every day if I am changing my own goal post and if I'm giving everything to the context, then we are not going to reach anywhere. So I feel that because firstly I mentioned that resources are limited. How to utilize the best optimum level, how to function, then we need some parameters which has to be those parameters have to be standardized. Then only we can measure. I understand in tribal areas how we will show the progress, and in normal areas there may be something different. Hilly areas, their problems may be different. But what is our aim? If we are thinking that through midday meal scheme, if we think that the learning outcomes have to be improved, in that case, we should know what is happening in hilly areas, what is happening in the plain areas. So I feel after listening to everyone, the standardization is a must. Yes, we can have some here and there. We can have some takes. Thank you.
Super. Now, this is the only part of the moderation role that I play, which says, okay, great, time is up types, right? So, but I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you got a sense, and thank you so much to all the panelists. It's been just wonderful, the positions that you've taken, the way you built it, the humor that you brought in, the insights and the passion that came through. All of this is just inputs. Each one of us are on our journeys on impact and so on. So if you've been able to kind of get an insight out of these conversations, I hope that was worthwhile and useful. Thank you very much, Uti. No, we're before time. Yeah, we are ahead of our times.
We are not standard.
Thank you so much for that wonderful interactive session. May I now request Mr. Gaurav Shah, co-founder ISDM, to felicitate all our panelists as a token of our gratitude and appreciation, followed by a group photograph. As with all our events, the team at ISDM has put together a bag with a few items to capture our gratitude to our esteemed speakers and guests. A tree is being planted at Trees for Delhi by Grow Trees with ISDM. The bag also contains the book Samaj Sarkar at Bazaar by Rohini Nilekani, that is an anthology of her journey into civil society and philanthropy. We also have the Data Indeed booklet put together by ISDM Center of Data Science and Social Impact, and a new era of giving, a compilation of essays and reflections by eminent philanthropists brought out by ISDM Center for Philanthropy for Inclusive Development. With this, we conclude all our sessions in Samrasta. We will now move for the closing evening plenary in Bhim. See you all there. Thank you so much.